Hey everybody, welcome to the Blacklist, the show where we interview the elite. Today we have Brandon Dawson on my right, and he's coming out with a book in September, I believe. Is that right?
That's correct.
So, for me as a business owner, I'm very intrigued because not too many people and businesses get to the level of which you've gotten. So tell us a little bit why you kind of created the book and, talk about your journey with it.
Yeah, I've been working on this book for at least 10 years.
Yeah.
And the reason I didn't put it out sooner is I felt like I needed to be the example, not talk about what an example should look like. And so my first business I started when I was in my 20s. I took it public at 29 years old, rang the opening bell of the American Stock Exchange. I was blowing it up, doing things that everyone said was impossible for me to do. And then one day I woke up with my private equity group selling my business out from underneath me and went back to broke. So all of a sudden, over 5 years, I was worth 10 million as a kid, and now I'm back to broke. So I really went through a dark period and had to recalibrate all aspects of the reasons I caused the private equity group to sell. And that was the big thing I had to admit, because I was a victim for a long time, and I blame them. But if I was an investor seeing how 29-year-old Brandon was running the company, and I had a shot to get all my money back, plus double my money, I would take it.
Right.
Because to me, I was being a superhero, and I was overcoming obstacles and doing things nobody had ever done before in my market, and raising capital and buying businesses. But to them, I looked like I was frantically trying to stay in business, and in reflection, I was.
Yeah. So
despite all the good things that were happening, I still ended up, unfortunately, being in a situation where they sold out from underneath me. And I went through a couple of years of a dark period, and I had some phenomenal mentors who helped me recalibrate my thinking. And then your doing follows your thinking. And so I had to find out how to become a great leader and how to understand finances and operations and people and all these things I didn't really know anything about, but I was just blowing through everyone, making magic happen.
Yeah. Well, sorry.
And I wrote the book because I was able to build my next company and exited at 77 times EBITDA, 151 million, by recalibrating, retraining, and approaching things differently. I wanted to share the process I went through to help other business owners do the same.
Well, let's dive into kind of like the bad for a little bit, because not too many people, I think right now, like a lot of business owners, since they're not at that level, a lot of the bad situations can crumble them. However, when you have it bad and when you have it, for example, like that dark period in your life, I'm assuming it's like 10 times bigger than what a normal business owner would experience. Is that right? Or
well, I mean, I went from zero. I went from least likely to succeed in a small high school.
Yep.
Barely got out with a 2.4 GPA, mowing the family orchard, dreaming of doing something big, being told that I should just buckle up for getting a good job, to ringing the opening bell of the American Stock Exchange by
huge.
29 years old. I had acquired over $100 million of businesses and built teams and making investor presentations and doing things that nobody would have thought. And I had built a net worth of 10 million by 29.
Yeah.
And so when all of a sudden by 32, it all went away and I was starting over at zero, what really happened in that window is all the people that were stunned by what I was able to do, that weren't congratulating me when I was doing it, came out of the woodworks to say, we knew you couldn't do it. We knew it was all just, it was all house and what do they give, house and mirrors or cards or something. And they were more vocal about my failure than they were about the success at the time I was having it. And it's just very difficult because I was so proud of what I did, and then it all went away. And so, yeah, it's harder to have, excuse me, it's harder to have and lose than to be striving to have.
Right. And what do you do in that moment when you don't have it? And a lot of people are, I knew it, you weren't going to make it, all that stuff. And then, look at you now,
Yeah. So look, I tell entrepreneurs that it takes resilience, like to have and fortify a mindset of success, irrespective of what's happening around you. And then also recognizing that you have surrounded yourself with a certain quality of person because of the quality of person you are. So I'm listening to my friends who quite honestly hadn't done shit.
Yep.
And I'm listening to them judge me. And I did more between the age of 26 and 31 than today any of them have done.
Yeah.
So I had to get to a place where I could drown that out and then get refocused. My mentors helped me get refocused on what were your strengths, what were your weaknesses, what can you do to learn to fortify your weaknesses, and what can you do to amplify your strengths. And so I went through this process. And in that process of discovery, I realized I wasn't a good leader. I realized I didn't really understand operational effectiveness. I realized that I had low belief at that point in time about what was possible. I realized that I didn't structurally and strategically go after building the business. I was just flailing. To the outsider looking at me, I looked like I was in survival mode.
Right.
And to me, I go back and reflect back. I lived 3 years. By 10 o'clock in the morning, my shirt was always stuck to my body because I was trying to figure out how to make payroll every other week, right? It just isn't a way to live. And when I really became real with myself, I decided that I was going to amplify my strengths. I was going to lean in and learn how to be remarkable at my weaknesses. And that led me to a whole series of mentors like John Maxwell in leadership, Jim Collins in operational effectiveness and research, Michael Gerber in process, Sharon Lechter in understanding how money works. And I just started Robert Anthony, Beyond Positive, how to get your mind right so you can get your actions right. And so I started reading these books, and all of a sudden over a 2-year period, I had hundreds and hundreds, if not 1,000 tabs in all those books with notes of how I needed to apply this.
Yeah. And that kind of goes back to, because I was watching a video of yours and you talk about like business owners being the lid, where essentially they are feeling stressed and overwhelmed, and why do I have to micromanage this? And they're basically, they put themselves in a position where, because they're not growing themselves as a leader, like they're the cap, right? Like business owner or employees and team members are unable to like grow because the business owner isn't growing, right? And is that kind of where it came from when you were like doing that for 2 years?
I remember cracking that leadership book. I was a dictator. I just shoved people into making things happen. And although at the time we were getting things done, obviously they weren't emotionally bought into it. So they weren't able to help me to where we would have been more successful. And I had to acknowledge that was my fault, not theirs.
Right.
And I cracked open John Maxwell's 21 irrefutable laws of leadership. And law number 1 is law of the lid. And what he was saying is a lid is a cap. And anybody under you, the only way to elevate them up is for you to grow, so you create expansion and room for them to grow.
Right.
Because anybody that's growing underneath you that gets to you is going to leave you.
Yeah.
So if you're the lid in your business, well, so that stuck out at me because I realized I'd surrounded myself with a whole bunch of people that I blamed for why things went wrong, but I attracted them and then I did not help them elevate.
Yeah.
And so I had to own that the next time around. And same with operations and same through that whole spectrum, and how I came up with 1,000 notes on how I needed to evolve as a human being, right?
Yeah.
And so, that law of the lid was, and there's 3 lids in business. So I expanded his work through all this other embodiment in my own experience. I'm like, actually, there's 3 lids in business. You have the leadership lid. So your business will only elevate to the level that somebody believes.
Yeah.
Right? So you have the belief lid, then you have the operational effectiveness lid. Well, if you have this high belief about what can be done and you're never able to move towards it, your belief will be lowered because everyone around you will be lowered, that you're just spouting this thing, but you're not making it happen.
Yeah.
And when you have belief that's lowering and you have operational effectiveness that's lowering, that's because you have low leadership lid. And the complexity in business with growing and scaling and getting big is there's actually 3 leadership lids in business. So you have the me lid. Do I have the resilience, and do I have what it takes to learn, develop, conquer, and bring people with me? I have to be responsible for me. But once I'm doing it, then it goes to we leadership. I need to develop people around me. Can they do it? Once they're doing it, then it goes to the business's cultural leadership, which is us leadership.
Yeah.
So it goes me, we, us. And then us is about 25 to 35 million in revenue. You got a handful of leaders that are all aligned with the mission, vision, values, and everyone's pushing the business to the next level as a team. Well, if you can't get through the me leadership because you have a low lid, you can't create the we leadership. And most likely everyone you do surround yourself with are low lids.
Yeah.
And then you never get to the us, which is why 98.3% of all businesses under 100 million are stuck under 3 million.
Yeah. So for the business owner that's stuck under 3 million, what's like their job scorecard that they need to be doing in order to grow? And I know you mentioned this one kind of formula where each employee should be able to generate the business 375,000. Is that
Well,
is that right?
I say minimum 250,000 of revenue per employee is a target, and
Okay.
then you should shoot for 500,000. Some businesses do more. It depends on the business, the sectors, and how they're calculating their cost of employees. It's a complicated formula, but that's why you got to learn it. But I say to business owners, no less than 250,000 of revenue per employee, and you should target 500,000. And then I split the difference and say, if you're below 500 or 300, pick 375 as a midpoint.
Yeah. So two things with that. Number one, how does that look like in service or delivery? Like, because it makes sense in either marketing or sales, but how would that look like for servicing? Like if you're hiring for fulfillment, how would they kind of accomplish that role? And
Yeah.
actually, answer that first, and then I'll ask you the second
Sure.
question part.
It's a great question. Most people misunderstand how to apply the law,
Okay.
but it's every business. So we researched over 4,000 businesses across hundreds of sectors, and these averages came up across service businesses, supply businesses, manufacturing, technology. It's an average.
Yeah.
And so how it works is, if I'm recruiting you to come to work with me, I'm identifying your roles, your responsibilities, your contributions to the business. And I shouldn't be hiring you if you're not allowing somebody else in the organization to free something up, or you're not adding something that would allow somebody in the organization to do more.
Right.
So it isn't that you're responsible for generating the revenue. It's organizationally, when we hire people, the targets for the organization and the scaling process and the leverage from economies of scale of people doing more things, creating more value, means the business needs to do that much more revenue for every single employee.
Okay, got it. That makes sense. Now going back to the original question, where businesses stuck under 3 million, what should be kind of like the scorecard or the daily responsibilities of that CEO in order to kind of break that cap?
Yeah, good question. And so learning to use the right terminology for business owners is important, because if you've got a $3 million business, you're not a CEO.
Okay.
You're a business owner. You're a founder.
Yeah.
CEOs wouldn't work for a $3 million business.
Right.
And this is a mistake. One of your first mistakes as a business owner that's trapped at 3 million is you've hired your accounting friend from church, or you're using a friend of the family's, and you make him your controller, and then you don't want to pay him any more money, so you make him your CFO, and then everyone that you engage knows you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
A C-suite executive that really knows what they're doing is going to cost you somewhere between $175,000 and $400,000. You're paying somebody 35, 50 grand. You should not be giving them the title. That's the first indication that you don't know what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
So look, there's 10 elements to building and scaling a business, and there's 7 breakpoints from startup to 125 million. And breakpoint 1 is startup to 3 million. 98% of all businesses are trapped at 3 million with less than 12 employees statistically. 31.5 million small to mid-sized businesses. 25 million have a single employee. 5.3 million have between 2 and 12, and only 600,000 have over 12 employees. So if you're at 3 million, you're in that zone of 5.3 million. And as a founder of that business, by the time you're 3 million, you should not be doing anything yourself. You should only be working and developing your next tier of leadership, and you should be focusing on pushing the business to 8 million. So the breakpoints are 3 million top end, 8 million top end, 15 million top end, 25 million, 45 million, 75 million, 125 million. And what you need to do when you're the business owner is, in breakpoint 1, it's the what. Your products and services, do they work? Then you accumulate a handful of people helping you do it. And then you get stuck because those people are friends and family and friends from college and ex-sports partners. And you start surviving in that 3 million range, and you don't have the technical skill set to bust through. To bust through the 3 to 8, it moves from what you do, and that has to work. It's number one reason businesses fail: no demand for product or service. To the who you do it with, which is the second reason businesses fail, is that they say can't find good people.
Yeah.
Well, you can kind of control 10 to 15 people, like my buddies and my friends, but you don't know how to harness the horsepower of those people to blow the business up.
Yeah.
That's a different technical move. And so breakpoint 2, 3 million to 8 million is the who you do it with, because as you then try to grow, you start adding more people and you get disappointed but you're saying to those people, hey, I need you to do this and do this and do this. And you got to remember that what you think is what you say is what you do, and what you do is what you're known for. And 88% of business owners that started their businesses weren't to be entrepreneurs, weren't to build a high value business system, weren't to become rich. It's because of what they didn't want. They didn't want a boss. They didn't want to be told what to do. They didn't want to be held accountable. And they wanted freedom and flexibility to live their life the way they want. And then they go hire people and they treat them the same way they think they want to be treated.
Yeah.
So it's mass chaos from the beginning. And it's only a gift from God if you're actually able to survive it and bust through it in those early stages, because you started the business from what you didn't want. You treat people the way you wanted to be treated, which is to be left alone until you're angry and you're not making any money. And then you become a dictator and you start trying to shove it down their throat. But because they're friends and families, there's low accountability in the business, high stress, and you tend to sit and do nothing.
Yeah. No, that, I mean, not only does that resonate, because, I feel like a lot of business owners, when they first start out, they hire friends and family because that's the only people that they know of. And then it isn't until you start hiring an A player that you realize like they're 3-4x what a normal person does. Obviously I'm not at that level, right? But when you have grown Cardone Ventures to 250 employees in 48 months, obviously you know how to get there step by step, which you're kind of breaking down now. At that level of leadership, what are you actually touching, kind of like on the day-to-day?
Yeah, so the difference between a founder, somebody who starts something, they're excited about it, they're inspired by whatever they're building or delivering, and an entrepreneur, an experienced entrepreneur, is I would never build anything if I didn't already know what the exit was. Yeah. Now, when I say exit, in our case, it's going to be doing an IPO. It's going to be, taking billions of dollars of businesses public with us and taking the 10X community with us, with Grant and myself. Most people start their business just hope they can get to the next level, and this is where it becomes a problem, because it's a heavy lift. Building a business is not easy. All businesses are built through trial and error, and then you got to make a decision if you really have the resilience to try it again, which is why most businesses stick under 3 million, because you feel like, I arrived, I'm at 3 million, I started at 0. My goodness.
Yeah.
But the technical move, and if you think about it percentage-wise, only 2.5% of the businesses make it from 3 million to 100. So like it's hard.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And 97% of all those businesses fail cyclically every 10 years. So it's even harder.
Right.
And the bigger you are, the harder you fall, the faster. So for me, how do I do it? It's because I understand there's 3 to 5 elements that you have to have in place between breakpoint 1 and 2 and 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We've engineered it. Think about it. If you right now bought a piece of land here in Las Vegas and you wanted to build a 10-story building, could you buy the land and just start building the building?
No.
I mean, you got to go through a process. You got to go get an architect. You got to get an engineer. You got to get a permitting process with the city. You're going to get inspected. You're going to have to follow your plans. You deviate from plans, they're going to shut you down.
Yeah.
There's all these rules. You go become a doctor. Can you just do medicine however you want? No, there's rules. If you're an accountant, you're a professional. You got to get your professional certification. Can you just do your accounting the way you want to, or do you have to follow a certification process?
Yeah.
So almost in every career, a lawyer, every career, you have rules, responsibilities, and a way of doing business. Would you agree?
I agree.
So the only place that you can actually build things with free range anymore, where you can kill yourself and the people around you, is a business.
Yeah.
There's no rules. There's no regulations. There's no nothing until you get to 25 million. And the IRS says you have to do accounting differently, because that's a bigger you are, the harder you fall. And so until you get there, you can just entirely wing it and hope it works. And it becomes devastating when you know 92% of all small businesses are owned by family members. When the business fails, the family unit struggles. When the family unit struggles, the community struggles.
Yeah.
So when we're saving businesses, which is my passion, when you're saving small businesses and helping people achieve their personal, professional, and financial goals through the business and showing them to bring their team to be able to do that through the business, then the community wins. And when the community wins, it's good for everybody.
Yeah.
So we're on a mission to save businesses. Yes, it's also about creating massive value. And yes, I'm smart enough to engineer it that while they're doing well, I'm doing well. And I think that that's why I say collaboration's a new currency. If you can work together with great people accomplishing remarkable things and wealth, you should all win together.
So is that why you waited to kind of come out with this book? Because I mean, you have a lot of success. Even if you kind of just ended it where you sold your company, that's still a massive, massive exit. However, you still waited, right? You still waited, I don't know how many years.
Yeah, I
after
sold
that,
in
but
16, so I waited until 23.
yeah. Yeah. And I think a lot of days, I mean, right now, we're kind of in a information era, right? Where everybody's kind of teaching and doing all of that. But, you know, foundations, like you said, business doesn't necessarily have rules. However, when you get to that level, there definitely is rules, and there's definitely steps to kind of get there. And really, you should be taking advice from people who've done it, not necessarily people who are, you know, just kind of, I wouldn't say have the business acumen that you have.
Yeah, you know, so I'm not a social media person. I've been producing content since 2006, but it was on an enclosed system for all the businesses I worked with.
Yeah.
My team in 2010 tried to get me to open it up, put it on YouTube, create a show, business with Brandon. But I was like, nah, that's all stupid, right? So there's another lesson in there, by the way. So I started the book in 2010. I was going to do what I'm doing today with Michael Gerber. We were going to call it E-Myth Industries, and we were going to go have the E-Myth chiropractor, the E-Myth optician, the E-Myth HVAC, the E-Myth this.
That's cool.
But then he and I couldn't come to an agreement on who we would select to be our partners. And to be completely frank, I was not ready. So I started the book in 2010, but I felt like I hadn't completed the cycle yet. And one of my mentors, who is a managing partner of a $25 billion private equity group, he said to me in 2013, you know, Brandon, if you put your book out and if you start doing a whole bunch of other markets and industries and you screw up the one that's the example, the prototype, you're going to have no credibility.
Yeah.
And that actually made me take a step back and thank God for mentors. And I was like, okay, until I actually sell my company, and it was a successful sale, not only for me, but see, I made all my customers my partners. I decentralized the equity structure from the beginning. I'm the first person I think that's done that. And we manually managed on our balance sheets and our ledgers all the equity ownership for my clients. So when I sold the business, $35 million was wired out to my clients. $15 million went to all my employees.
Nice.
Because they were also my investors. That
Yeah.
was my thing. If you're going to do business with me, you're investing in my company, I want you to have some of the shared equity in the upside. And so I thought, you know, I better sell the business and prove that of the high value. So I put the business up for sale in 2015. I ran a process, same process. We engineer businesses based on, now it's 10 years of research and data. But I use the same way I engineered businesses, engineered 8 specific businesses that I thought might want to buy me.
Yeah.
Because of what I could do to help them. And when I presented it to my business bankers at one of the top firms, Piper Jaffray's, the head of healthcare said, no one's going to buy into that. You got no chance. Because I was saying I want $200 million for my company, and I was only doing $35 million in revenue and $2.3 million in EBITDA.
Yeah.
And I said, you need to go watch how I sell. So I made 8 presentations around the world to 8 specific targets, and I had 8 bids. And I bid it up to 151 reported sale. It was actually 188 or 187.
Yeah.
Can't talk about the other 15, 16 million. And I was pitching big companies like Siemens Healthcare and stuff. These were not little tiny companies. And I was able to get that sales price. And my pitch was, I'm Brandon Dawson. I have a $35 million business. If you were to acquire me, we would add $2 billion worth of value to your enterprise within 36 months, and I want 10% of it.
Yeah.
And my banker said, no one's going to hook on that. But in all 8 cases, what do you think the number one question was asked when I proposed, that was my opening statement?
How?
Yeah. How are you going to add value to our business?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's easier for people to lean into intellectual ignorance and arrogance than awareness and curiosity. See, I use their energy to want me to prove to them that I could do it versus me pitching them I could do it.
Yeah.
See the nuance?
I do. Yeah.
So I was like, good question. Let me show you. And then I laid out how we engineer businesses, and I engineered their businesses. And here's what we do. Here's what you do. Here's what we would do if we were inside of you. Here's what the stats are. Here's how bad you're operating. I knew more about their businesses because I researched them for 18 months using our research project, spent hundreds of thousands of dollars per potential target. And I'm showing them their business, not mine.
Yeah.
And I'm saying, but here's mine. And if I did mine to yours, and here's mine. And all of a sudden I had 8 bidders. So we sold for 5.5 times revenue, 77 times EBITDA. And in 2016 to a company that was the winner. It was a Danish public company trading at $17.40 a share for 3 years. It hadn't moved. They took a lot of heat from their competitors who were also trying to buy us, by the way. And in 36 months, by working as a team globally and deploying globally, the stock price was $94. It went to $4.5 billion.
Yeah, no, I saw that. So question for you, because I'm unfamiliar with that type of space. Why wouldn't they just kind of build it out, or would it just take too long? Why don't they do it in-house?
Yeah, all of them were trying to, and they were doing it the way I was doing it in the late 90s. See, I knew how to do it. They were just experiencing it. And although they had a lot of money, they were spending so much money trying to figure it out that it was starting to affect their earnings. And when you affect their earnings, they stop spending.
Yeah.
So they wanted to go out and buy retail. They had gone out and bought a bunch of retail, and then the retail was suffering. It was declining by 30, 40, 50, 60%. And they didn't know how to fix it because they were manufacturing people. You know, you're in Europe building widgets. You're not going to come to the United States and sit down with a previous founder and get them to 10x their sales results by shoving it down their throat and lowering prices because you're desperate.
Right.
Which is how most of these people would operate.
Dang. Okay. And so with your book, like I'm assuming this is what you talk about when you're talking about like tiny shift in
thinking.
Yeah, tiny shifts in thinking. Is there like what other examples can you provide that are like within the book that are just kind of like aha moments for people?
Well, this book is loaded with my personal transformational aha moments.
Yeah.
Like in the first chapter, it says that it starts with pull over. Because see, after my private equity group sold out, I was on top of the world. I became a victim. And my closest and dearest friend, Hector Lamarck, we'd play golf all the time at our country club. Best friends, most positive guy, huge, 14, 15,000 people in Primerica, just a world-class human being. And I respected him so much. And he said, on the 9th hole at Bighorn, we were playing golf, and I was in that trap of looping, if only, if only, if only, if only, if only, if only.
Yeah.
He said, pull the cart over. And I start the story with him saying, you're my best friend. You're a super powerful human. You have given that gift away. And you're becoming a victim and a drainer. And if that doesn't change, this will be the last time you and I play golf together. That's how I start the book. Because that was one of the most impactful moments of my life, because it was from that I was able to engineer who I became today. And what I do is I walk through the exact way that he mentored me into finding the right mentors to bridge the gap from what I naturally had an ability to do to what I didn't know how to do, but I had enough success. I was operating with intellectual ignorance and arrogance, just pushing through with power, assuming I was going to break through because I was so good. And to be honest, I meet so many business owners that remind me of me, and then they're broke and out of business a year, 2, 3 years later. So really removing myself from that moment and then teaching how did I program myself to go do what I did. And the reason I waited to put the book out is I never felt it was quite good enough to prove that what I was talking about worked.
Right. Which is crazy to me. Because, on the outside, it's like everybody's like, oh, yeah, it works, But that makes a lot of sense because with you and the way that you're kind of viewing it, if it has to make sense to you first, before you feel like you can kind of put it out to people. Which, by the way, that's very powerful, the conversation that you had with your friend and mentor. And a lot of people, when they're in that space, they're just unaware. They just can't see outside of like what's currently happening to them. So for you, it's like somebody else kind of had to tell you. And then from there, did you just kind of, you mentioned that he helped you out. He showed you how to get mentors, and then you ended up getting mentors that helped you out. Was that like probably the biggest switch?
Yeah. So the biggest switch was what he did is he told me to go home, and it's in the book. He told me to go home and draw a line down the middle of a piece of paper and write down all the great things and remarkable things I did that everyone would have assumed I'd never be able to do. Come on. Like I went out and made 100 presentations. I got somebody to give dumbass kid $1 million, and then somebody else to give me 6, and then the most prestigious private equity group in the world to give me 18. And then I listed my company on the American Stock Exchange at 29. I shouldn't even been there as a high school graduate, one of the youngest people ever to do it. And like, write those things down, because those are the things that were inspiring to me, right? Like all the stuff I overcame. And then he said, and after you do that and bask in that success, on the right side, in reflection, write down the things you didn't do right, where your weaknesses were. And I started, it was like, at first I'm like, okay, well, I don't know, man. I was so good. Like, what are my weaknesses? And then I realized when my company sold and I left, not one employee out of 380 said, thank you for the opportunity.
Oh, shoot.
And so I realized, well, wait a minute, maybe I thought I was a good leader because I had a lot of employees, but how come nobody liked me? And so I wrote down leadership, and then I went into the finances. I bought that business in 2019, different story. It caused a drain on the company. I had to do an emergency financing. It gave control to my private equity group that allowed them to sell it out from underneath me. Why did I make the decisions I made on the financial side? Because I didn't really pay attention to the financials. I left that up to my finance officer. So then that went back to leadership. I abdicated my responsibility of buying the business and integrating it. And I just went through and really thought about it, smoked a couple cigars, drank a couple bottles of wine, got pissed again at the people and then at myself for letting the people down, and then that let me down. And it was a whole process that took me several hours. But at the conclusion of it, I had the list of what I did that made me a super powerful human, and I had the list of all the mistakes I made. And then I went back to him. And he's like, okay, leadership, John Maxwell, read this book. Operational Effectiveness, Jim Collins, read Good to Great, Great by Choice, How the Mighty Fall. Read Sharon Lechter on Cash Flow Quadrant, and how to remove yourself from doing all the work and lifting. Read Beyond Positive Thinking to get your mindset right again and retarget where you're going to go. And literally, I read all these books he gave me. He had them in his library he gave me. And I started putting tabs in it and making notes. And when I was done, I had 1,000 tabs across like 12 books, and it filled in everything on that right side for me. And then I was like, aha. If I could actually go do this. And then I was like, if I could rebuild a business, what would be the rules? First rule, I won't use anybody else's money. Second rule, I'm going to do it where I'm going to share the success with my team, and I'm going to share the success with my clients. Third rule, I'm going to build something that creates so much value for my clients, they'll want to spend money with me. I won't have to ask them for money.
Yeah.
Fourth rule, I'm going to reinvent how small businesses are built. And I'm going to use all this stuff that I've identified that's great and that I need to learn to develop, and I'm going to keep track of every single thing that works. And one day I'm going to help thousands of businesses do this. And that's really the business. The business I went to build in 2005, Audigy Group, was only to be the example, the prototype of what I'm doing today.
Yeah.
In fact, I had so much success that in 2009, 10, 11, 12, when the world was melting down, I was on the Inc. 500 6 years in a row, highest power awards for percentage-wise hiring more employees. 3 times I've been nominated for Entrepreneur of the Year by Ernst & Young. 6-time fastest growing Pacific Northwest companies in a row. Like, I was getting all these awards, all these accolades, and that's when I started the book, because it was all happening. And these mentors, I started hiring them to come speak at my events where I'd have 1,500 people. And they would come in and they would see what we're doing, and they would see how I use their work, and they would see how I gave people awards with their names on it. And all of a sudden, John Maxwell takes his dad into a hearing aid office, and he sees a John Maxwell Leadership Award. And he's like, where'd you get that? They tell him, and he wants to meet me. Same with Michael Gerber. That's how I found him. So all of a sudden, these mentors that I used and read their books, that I deployed what I learned, they were intrigued by what I learned from their work. And over the course of 2009 to 2013, I met every single one of those authors. I started working with them. I went into John Maxwell's company and helped him and doubled his business. And all of a sudden I get to work with these authors. They become my friends. And today John wrote the foreword to my book, 9-Figure Mindset, because he watched what happened from 2010 to 2023. He's literally lived inside of that bubble with me, watching it from his perspective. And he's like, I have to write your foreword.
Wow. That is insane. And what a journey. Like, I'm assuming you're that person for many people now, right? Where, I mean, people follow you. They take your advice. They change their business. It's life-changing for them. Like, somebody else can probably sit in this chair and have the same story, but it's about you, and because you're impacting a lot of people.
And that's my Look, my number one, like people ask me, why do you do this? Because I want to impact and create 1 million 10X business owners. And I partnered, my wife recommended I look at Grant Cardone and see, when I was like, how do I go to market and volume? That was my new like thing in 2017 and 18.
Yeah.
I couldn't figure out how to do it. It's like, how do I go big, wide, fast? And my wife said, you should look at some of these social media guys. So I got trapped. I didn't believe in social media for personal branding and stuff. I didn't have any followers. So I started looking, and I was just turned off by so many of these guys. And I could tell, look, if you're a world-class piano tuner and you walk into somebody's home and you hear one stroke of a key, you know if that piano is tuned.
Yeah. That
is my ear for knowing all these bullshitters out talking about how they can grow and scale businesses.
Yeah.
As soon as they start talking, I'm like, bullshit. And so I started doing that. And I'm like, all these people are full of crap. And then I got into some of the bigger names. And it's like, okay, but they're already busy and they already have partners. So why would they want to work with me? And then my wife said, you should look at Grant Cardone and Elena Cardone. And she turned on some video on YouTube, and he's running across in front of an airplane with his hat on sideways, screaming, Grant Cardone here, 10X, 10X. And I'm like, oh my God, don't ever show me another video. And she's like, no, the thing that pisses you off is that he's got all this attention. He's got all these followers. He's got a jet. He's got all this stuff. And you feel like you've done as well, and nobody knows you or cares. That's what pisses you off. And I'm like, no, it isn't. No, it isn't. And she's like, yes, it is. And she goes, you should listen to his book. And I was like, I don't want to listen to anything from that guy. And so we got in the car, and my daughter was in there. She's like, you're listening to his book. So I started listening to it within, like I said, piano tuner, within 5-10 minutes. I'm like, this guy knows what he's talking about. This is a real deal.
Yeah.
That was at the end of 18. We decided to go to the event. In 19, he said he was going to have 35,000 people. And I wanted to know 5 things. Number one, what kind of audience does he really have? Do they fit all the research I had done all those years? Are they all business owners across all these different sectors? Number 2, does he and Elena really work together? Because Natalie and I wanted to build something together. And it's easier to work with people that are already working with the spouse. Third thing, do we complement what he does, or do we conflict against it? See, we had looked at Tony, but Tony has a partner for every single channel of the things we do, and they're not connected. They're all disconnected. And I already know if you've got one person doing marketing and one person doing finance and one person doing operations and one person doing strategy and one person teaching people and one person looking at data, it's also disconnected. I don't care how good the teachers are of those silos. It is an impossibility for business owners to put it together at the right time.
Yeah.
And Tony had partners doing all that. So I'm like, I can't be his partner, and I can't work with all those other people because I have a system. And so when I went to Grant, I watched, and this is what I wanted to know. What can I complement it? And he did marketing, sales, and what I call investment thesis, which is the 10 element of scaling for multifamily. And he'd raise more money than anybody else. So all of a sudden I'm like in his audience going, I do the other 7 and I'm world class. You put his world class with my world class, we will absolutely kill it. And there was no conflict. The 4th element was, can I really work around this guy? Because on the persona, I just needed to know, right? And would he want to work with me? And then the 5th most important thing is, when I was 26, my investor that gave me some of the $6 million, John Strauss, said, hey, Warren Buffett at 27 is worth $10 million. At 47, he was worth $75 million. And at 53, he was worth $350 million. And the point was, you're not going to make a lot of money in the first 20 years. So don't have it in your head that you're going to go from, I'm doing this and I'm going to be worth $100 million in the next 36 months. Well, by 27, I was worth $10 million. So I hit that target. The problem was at 32, I was back down to 0.
Yeah.
When I sold my business at 46, I was worth $100 million. I hit it. I made it back. So my confidence was really high, but I had a new problem. My new target was 350.
Yeah.
Can Grant be the guy that could actually help me accelerate 10x what I had done and become worth 350 million by age 53, 54? That was the thing. We went there first day. I'm like, all in. Now all we needed to do is get Grant to know who we were, because he didn't have a clue.
And you probably gets pitched anyways.
Everyone. And I'm smart enough I get pitched. So, I'm an expert on pitching. Someone asked me, like, what's one of my...
100%. Like, I mean, that's when you went to the investment groups or bankers and things like that. Like, obviously you're very good at pitching because, I mean, they bought into the idea.
And people ask, how do you get so much for your business? Because if you know who you're pitching to, you know how to pitch. And so what I knew is that there's no way some dude and his wife buy $35,000 of tickets on the internet that nobody has ever met, nobody knows who they are, and we're sitting in the front row for 3 days. There's no chance that a guy like Grant Cardone, no matter how many 35,000 people are in there, isn't going to ask the question, who are those people?
Right.
So I just needed to be chill. Just so happens John Maxwell was one of the speakers. And John, after he was done speaking, called Natalie up to the side stage because he wanted to introduce us to Grant, but it was in front of 35,000 people. And all these security guys were coming around. So I told John, we're going to go back and sit down. Grant asked him, what was that about? And John called me after he walked off stage. And John said, I told Grant, if you get a chance to meet those two people, anything they tell you, anything is the truth. And Grant's like, when I finally talked to Grant, he's like, that's one of the biggest endorsements I've ever heard. And I said, well, it's because he and I have had a great history together and we've done great things. And I love that man.
Yeah.
And so we went to GrowthCon and the real estate event 2 days after. We met, we talked, and 3 weeks later they were in Cabo. We flew down to Cabo and we sat down and punched a deal out, launched it June of 19. Me, my wife, one other person, and today we have 285 employees. We'll do 135 million in revenue this year. We've never invested any capital. We have no debt, and we're launching a whole bunch of new companies. Like 18 months ago, I launched 10X Health.
Yeah.
So,
So
we acquired Gary Brecka's $400,000 business. Today we're doing $5 million a month. We got Dana White to be our advocate. We have over 100 million impressions on the internet. All that, by the way, is stuff I've learned from Grant. Since partnering with Grant, I've been able to do in 4 years what it took me 15 years to do by myself. And we're 50-50 partners. I am the managing partner. I control the business. He doesn't want to control it. It's my IP. He doesn't want to do it. Just like, and I help him in his businesses. Now, what's happened in our relationship is the fund is now he's raised 1.1 billion because he could focus all his attention on it. It's the most amount of money ever raised in crowdfunding with no commissions, no intermediaries, no promotes, 100% off of social media.
Yeah.
At 1.1 billion, and that's going to the moon already. The training business is 5 times better or bigger in our business. So combined, our goal is to take all that public and be worth $50 billion. And we're going to drag all the clients we're working with today. I actively manage in our portfolio $2 billion in our actual revenues. A lot of people go out and talk about, $300 million in revenue. They're counting the companies they have a little equity in. I don't count that.
Yeah.
I count my revenues, what I put in cash in my bank account, because if I counted my partner businesses, it'd be 2.2 billion.
Yeah. Dude, that's huge. Well, number one, congratulations. Number two, I'm excited for the book. I'm probably going to do a bulk buy too. And I appreciate you being on the show. If there's any lasting thoughts or anything that you want to leave with the audience, you can do so now. But where can people find you?
Yeah, the easiest thing is at Brandon M. Dawson on Instagram. It's been a lot of work for me to get used to being sociable, right, on social media.
Yeah.
But all our events and stuff are on there, and there's a link in there, and you can see everything we've got going on. If you're interested, I'd be honored if you pre-ordered my book, 9-Figure Mindset, NINE figuremindset.com. I've produced about 3 hours of free content to go alongside the book. Look, it's my intention. So I'm going to state my intention with this book. It's my intention to impact personally, professionally, and financially the lives of the people who read that book. That's why I wrote it. And that's my intention. And that is why I took the time to do it. And for anybody who actually pre-orders it, I've shot all that free content for you. It's thousands of dollars of content to fill in the blanks and help you pursue your greatness faster. Most importantly, it's about saving businesses, saving families, and saving finances. I mean, if you get your mind right and you get your strategy right, your money will follow that. So I wrote this book for you. And if you're a dreamer and you're like, how do I get started? You can apply what you learn in that book to start whatever you want. And I'd be honored if you would pre-order it, 9figuremindset.com, the free content. And we're going to be doing a bunch of workshops around this. And for people that order it, we're going to be randomly picking people to join those workshops that other people are going to spend $10, $20, $50, $100,000 to participate in.
Nice. Oh, yeah, that's a lot of value. Well, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.